From New York, it's That Kevin Show.
See, I knew it.
Come on, Kev. What's a few classified documents between friends?
I told you all the time. I knew it. I knew he had some too.
Here he is, That Kevin McCullough.
And welcome back to Times Square. Kevin McCullough, glad to have you with us. That Kevin Show, always glad to talk about America first here on That Kevin Show. In fact, we've gone to great lengths to continue the discussion about America First. And my next guest is no stranger. In fact, in some ways, he is the mouthpiece for the America First movement. MarcLotter was part of the Trump campaign in 2020. He is out there making the case now for why America First principles must be adhered to in order for our country to be made great once again. Please welcome MarcLotter back to That Kevin Show. Hello, Mark.
Hey, Kevin, thank goodness I'm just the mouthpiece, not the brains behind it, right?
Well, in some respects, people talk about Donald Trump and Make America Great Again. In a lot of respects, at least from my observation of history, he was a continuation of the angst that started during the Obama era with the Tea Party. And it's just Americans that believe in founding principles, that believe in putting the focus of American government and public interest on the welfare of what America needs. And the current administration, and you saw it again in the State of the Union last week, has seemed to run and made everybody else that's even possible first, and then America comes somewhere after that. Am I misreading the signs?
No, you're not. In fact, I mean, look at the State of the Union. The first thing out of his mouth was about Ukraine and how we should spend billions of dollars securing and defending Ukraine's border, but nothing about securing our own border or dealing with the sky-high prices that we've had to do. And, Kevin, I actually think that the whole America First movement actually goes back way farther than that. I think you had so many Americans who had been lied to by politicians of both parties and candidates of both parties. I mean, going all the way back to Read My Lips, to the fact that for 30 some years, we had a law on the books that said you're going to move the embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And yet presidents of both parties who said they were going to do it kept signing the waiver to not actually get it done, or to get tough with China, or to defend American manufacturing jobs. All of these things, I think the American people got sick and tired of your so-called standard politicians saying one thing on the campaign trail and doing the exact opposite when they got into office. So they turned to an outsider, they turned to a businessman whose most famous phrase is, "You're fired."
Yeah, and it's really remarkable. I was with some Wall Street types last week as an oil and gas company that I'm investing in came to NASDAQ and rang the bell, and we got to be there with them when they did that. And it was really striking because we got into a conversation about how America's wealthiest president, probably, I mean, Donald Trump had significant wealth long before he was ever a politician. It's usually the other way around. Usually people get rich while they're in politics, but he made his wealth and began to lose it while he was serving publicly. But it's this billionaire, it's this uber successful billionaire that seems to connect with the America First everyday plumber, mailman, doctor, lawyer, Main Street USA. Like the everyday American seems to identify more with this guy, who we're told by his opponents is elite and racist and all these other things that nobody can expect him to relate to. And yet when you see him with people, everyday folks, the everyday man and woman, they love this man.
No, absolutely. And I think it's part of his DNA. I mean, I remember on the 2016 campaign and in the transition, the early years in the White House, I remember the president telling a story about how the person he always wanted to talk to at all of his buildings was the loading dock guy, because that's the person who knows everything that's going on in the building, everything that's coming in and out, every repairman that has to come fix a problem that someone else should have fixed beforehand. He knows exactly who's in and out. And then he would talk to the plumbers and electricians, like, don't tell me what the rich people who buy these condos and these apartments want. Tell me what you would do differently. And then he would adjust his plans based on the people who are actually doing the job. And if he didn't like how they were doing it, he would grab a paintbrush and do it himself.
Well, it's interesting because my friends who were here were from out of town. They were staying at the Trump Tower, and I've heard this from multiple people. But if you talk to the room service, if you talk to the people that serve you at the front desk and take your bags up and do all the rest of it, they will, to a person, just be effusive about what a good boss Donald Trump has been. And I think that the American people saw that when they were given a chance to really understand that he wasn't just a TV star or someone that, had built a big conglomerate of companies. But let's talk about the road ahead, because as much as it is interesting to now know that Haley's gone, Joe Biden is still mad, angry, and crazy, there is a campaign to run between now and November 5th. If you were, and you're not part of the campaign officially this year, not that I know of, at least as of yet,
No.
but if you were, what would the focus be inside that thing, that think tank right now? What are they preparing to do? What's the media campaign going to look like? What's the message that we're going to be hearing on the airwaves?
Well, I think the biggest difference between 2020 and 2024 is that Joe Biden has a record. He was a hypothetical president back in 2020. You really couldn't attack him for things that Obama did. You couldn't go back 12 years before that and attack him for things that he had done over his 50-year career in the Senate. So he could hide in his basement. He could say, I'll end the pandemic and I won't mean tweet. And people could envision that, oh, okay, fine. Well, he has a record now, and the American people don't like it. 2/3 of the American people think we're on the wrong track. 60+% disagree with his policies on inflation, the economy, immigration, crime, education. You go down the list, and there's hardly anything that Joe Biden's approval is actually positive. It's mostly overwhelmingly negative. So I think you just have to draw the contrast and ask people, ask yourself, are you safer now than you were 4 years ago or 5 years ago? Are things cheaper now than they were when Donald Trump was in office? Was the border more secure when Donald Trump was in office? And when you answer that question, it pretty much just points you right in the direction of where you should cast your ballot come November.
Mark, I wrote in my town hall piece this week that the president did owe the American people an apology. But it was to the Laken Riley family at the State of the Union and not the illegals that he apologized for calling illegal. MSNBC and CNN are out the last couple of days with polls saying that now they see Joe Biden underwater in every poll that they're looking at. I know it would take a move of heaven and earth to get them to ever admit that, but he has blundered big time in almost every public step he's taken in the last few weeks. Is it your opinion that they're going to try to replace him at the convention?
I really don't think they can. And let me tell you why. So a lot of the polls that we've seen in the last couple of weeks or so indicate Donald Trump getting 25% of the black vote, which is obviously one of the most important voting blocks for Democrats. He got 8% in 2020. Now, I do believe that number will fall. I hope it doesn't. I hope it grows, but it will likely fall as the campaign starts to pick up speed. But if they were to replace Joe Biden with anyone other than Kamala Harris, who's even worse and more unpopular than Joe Biden, you will take an already fracturing voting bloc and depress them even more.
MarcLotter, always appreciate your input and your insight. Thank you for being back with us.
Always give it a go.
Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.